Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to another Thirsty Thursday. Yes, I'm in a different stage, different place. I'm actually in a hotel this week because I'm at Hack SpaceCon, but we know we can't miss the Thirsty Thursday live streams. And today we have a special guest. You should know him. If you haven't followed him, you're going to have been following him tonight. So I'm a little under the weather, so I'm sorry about that. But I want to go ahead and bring in Tom from Lawrence Systems. So come in.
Hey, how's it going?
What? Good. How's it going? How's it going?
It's going great.
Good, good, good. Yeah, so, obviously, thank you so much for joining tonight. Hopefully, you're doing well. And if for those folks that don't know who Tom is, who is Tom?
Tom's some guy on YouTube that says, "Hey, I'm Tom here from Lawrence Systems," a whole lot, which I don't say it as much now, but I do a lot of videos covering some of the security stuff because I work in the IT. I'm much more on the blue team side. But I always keep, I always say I work on the blue team, but I hang out with the red team because I got to learn how the shady stuff's going to happen. So I keep a purple team mindset. But I
Hmm.
also do a lot of videos on network engineering, storage servers, virtualization has been a hot topic, and everything else. It all kind of, because it comes all back to the home lab, and is your home lab going to be for the hacking side of the world, or learning the defense sides? I'm kind of dabble in all of it. It's a long career in tech, and I love just engaging with the communities and teaching people stuff.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, that's definitely some great stuff. So, what has been like your most enjoyable aspect of the whole tech space, right? As a tech consultant, like, what is it like? Oh man, I'm thriving on this, or I have to do this because I have to do it. It's my job. Like, what's like your bread
Um,
and butter?
so a lot of it is, and this kind of goes throughout my career, is coming up with like looking at the problem and figuring out an innovative way, something a little bit different way to solve it. It's like scratching your head at the problem. We get this whole we were laughing about this. I never thought about it as much until we got in a discussion with a bunch of other techs at work just the other day. And we're all talking about what we grew up on, because one of the older guys made some reference to some old obscure show, and I'm like, well, we're all a little younger than you, is what our immediate joke. And I'm like, I grew up on MacGyver, and a bunch of other people go, yeah, MacGyver's my favorite. And I realized in the group, anyone that was technical, like, oh, it's all about MacGyver because it's all about this problem solving. It's about, it's a puzzle. We want to take it apart, and working with limited resources of, how do we get this to move forward? How does this work? And I never like things being just simply they work or press this button. Why do I press that button? So those have been the things that have been really interesting. Where I'm at today with a lot of that, for example, is, I've been a long time open source nut. And
Hmm.
well, they used to call us open source nuts, or all kinds of other names in the early days. It's been a long time that I've been advocating for open source, but now things like the open source hypervisors have been really top of the list with the VMware incident. So it's given me an opportunity again to look at companies that were normally the traditional, no one got fired for buying VMware. We just use VMware because that's, what we do type thing. And now they're looking at it going, well, that doesn't seem like a very reasonable price that VMware has change that license to.
Hmm.
And so we talk about things like XCP&G, fully open source. Sometimes I'm talking about Proxmox, but some of the companies that we've now migrated have like 600 or 700 virtual machines they're migrating over. I
Hmm.
just got pinged by someone at a very large company that's in the Fortune 500 because they know me, and they messaged me on Signal. They're like, "Yeah, we're going to have to move off VMware, so I might be talking to you." I was like, "Cool.
Yeah.
I'd love to get your business at the scale you guys operate at." They're trying to decide because the owner doesn't want to pay the ransom, is what they said. But I had actually tweeted that as a joke. It was based on the conversation I had with this large company of who's better at extracting money out of Fortune 500s, Broadcom with their VMware purchase, or ransomware operators. Which one's actually better at? And someone actually pointed, if you added up all the ransomware, it's actually not as much as the stock price has gone up and the market cap's gone up for Broadcom. So Broadcom is actually winning this war of extracting money from Fortune 500s.
Yeah. That's a very valid point, and I haven't thought of that, right? Because everyone, ransomware is definitely a hot topic,
Oh yeah.
and yeah, like a lot of folks are getting, every now and then or every other day is there's always a ransomware attack. So, as a tech consultant, as an MSP or whatever you call yourself, how are you protecting your folks from ransomware attacks?
This is it. I think right now, I think we're just like 30 different products on our list, but I'll cover the primary ones. This is always a discussion is I wish there was, and there's always somebody in security trying to tell me there's going to be this one single service that encompasses all the things. And that's vaporware. I've been in tech long enough and heard it every year. I don't think it's coming.
Hmm.
But it's generally, as security is, very layered protection. Well, I was going to start with, we use Huntress, we use SentinelOne. Those are two primary security products for endpoint management. Going up from there, you got to have visibility for your north-south going through the firewall and everything else. A lot of that's ingested.
Hmm.
The SIM tools we use, Blumera is primarily what we use. We actually also have Stellar Cyber. We're still running both of them. It depends on the client because
Hmm.
we bought one and then we bought the other, and one's a better. We think Blumera is probably a better fit, but it's one of those things. You got those tool. Then we have, I think it's Auto Elevate. We have a bunch of tools so there's no one that has admin access, and we use just-in-time
Hmm.
privileging on there. And then you have all the user training side of it. That's now, which is cool. It's required by insurance, so it's not been hard to sell people any of these products.
Exactly.
We're in a
Exactly.
yeah. So we have to do the phishing. I hate the phishing emails. Like I I wish we didn't have to do that. I wish we could come up with a system that our end users could just uh, use that wouldn't like, hey, we are the security professionals, we're the computer professionals, we're now giving you a tool that you can just use. But that's just not the case. It needs
Hmm.
We need to train the users as well, so you're validating all the 2FA. And I've seen
Hmm.
someone comment in there about like Blumera. The interesting thing, because so much of this stuff is in the cloud, and that's another connector we always set up for the Blumera, is making sure that we have the cloud connector, because we're watching for the first thing the adversary is going to do. They're going to grab a session token because, okay, we've got
Hmm.
2FA. How are they going to get on there? All right, they going to grab a session token. Then what are they going to do? Pivot to the cloud. What are they going to do in the cloud? They're going to go ahead and start creating some automated rules that are going to forward some email and everything else. So we actually have a series of triggers that watch for all those things to happen. We even have some impossible travel triggers watching. So if they come at a different IP address that's out of their geography, we're like, yep, that's the flag for us to start investigating this account. It's going to trip an alert. It's kind of crazy when you think of like all these little edges and how much work goes into all the tooling to protect all these little edges. And still, I got to tell the users, don't copy and paste your password. And if you're we actually set our clients up a Bitwarden, and if Bitwarden doesn't autofill, you're not on the right site. Don't go copying the password and pasting it in there, because like when something does happen, you start the investigation, but then you got to talk to the end users. What were you doing? Well, it wouldn't fill in my password at this site that said Microsoft or something like that. Like, yeah, those are all zeros. This doesn't say Microsoft. You shouldn't be
Yeah.
logging into that site. Yeah, that's why I had to copy my password out of another one and paste it in here. I'm like, this is all right. Let's go for some training.
Hmm.
Oh,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. That, and I tell people, right, like all the time, you have the human element is always the weakest link.
Hmm.
That's no matter. You can have Blue Mirror, you can have Hunters, you can have CrowdStrike, you can have Endpoint Defender, Microsoft Defender, whatever. Call these things, but like you said, like I can just make a portal, like you said, Microsoft or whatever,
Yep.
and say, okay, like I can clone it with SE, set toolkit or whatever. You can have Go Fish, whatever,
Evil Engine
kind
X,
of.
Go Fish.
Exactly.
There's a lot of great tooling out there.
Yeah, for an adversary to clone your site, and yeah, just throwing that in something like scan URL, or just running that through a little validation, that'll like obviously take you a long way. But doing that the end user training, and then get into the end user, for them to even take that URL and put it into something like total virus total, or scan, or URL
Yeah.
scan.io or whatever. It's like it's a mission for them. They're like, oh, screw this. I'm just gonna take this and give it a jingle and get compromised.
Yeah.
And
We had one that I thought was kind of interesting. I can't remember the name of it. I think it was the Info Stealer one.
info stealer. Yep.
Yeah, Info Stealer. How they acquired it was interesting. So we have a lot of being in the Midwest, Detroit area, with automotives. We have a lot of transportation company hauling freight, and so
Hmm.
one of the larger freight providers, they were trying to look up, it was a safety inspection report. They were looking for a template of it, basically. So I thought that was interesting. Okay, looking for a safety, this, standard, what you would think is a Google search. And there was a PDF.exe that they had downloaded. Well, I was shocked at, like, it was a really specific, it said truck maintenance report. Like, it was the right name that they would look for as
The
a
name
safety
can,
person.
yeah.
Yeah, I was like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
they really, I mean, this is some drilled down targeting. There's an ad that was in Google that brought them right to where they needed to be. I'm like, these, I mean, like you said, the human element of not realizing that was an ad, not realizing that was an executable, it set off all the triggers. It locked their system down so they didn't get far with it. It didn't laterally move across the network. It locked that person out immediately. So
Mm-hmm.
everything did everything it was supposed to do. But it's really this focus these people have to go through that level, and someone had at least some understanding of what a transportation person would search for, this
Mm-hmm.
common form, and then have an ad for it and things like that. So yeah, it's intriguing. Like, they're really zeroing in on the people to get them to click on these things.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's always so, obviously, for the folks that don't know, like, if we're, as an attacker or as an adversary, if we're going to target you, like, let's target InfoSec Pat or, Lauren System, whatever, like, let's use us as an example. What do you think, or how do you think, like, the hackers really hone in on, okay, like you said, a landing page, or how do we know what your OWA, or your, authentication, maybe using Okta or something like Delinea, or whatever kind of, authentication, or IAM, or even CyberFox, whatever kind of tool that you're utilizing. How do you think these guys get that information?
you know, it's kind of interesting because we're starting to see more of this. A few years back, I had done a video just where you could look and figure out pretty easily via LinkedIn, or even
Mm-hmm.
the direct hires that companies used to do to figure out what technologies you're using. They would look,
Mm-hmm.
you look for a specialist in this, or you could just go LinkedIn and figure out who worked at the companies. Some of my
Exactly.
friends who now work at these larger companies, they have had their LinkedIn's scrubbed. It is part of the requirement of their employment there. They do not list where they work. They do not talk about where they work. They are
Mm-hmm.
watched very much to try to stop the targeting of it. I mean, you look at the scale and scope that the United Health hack happened. A lot of people don't realize just
Mm-hmm.
how big of a company that is, that they're in the Fortune 500 space, or that large of a medical company. And undoubtedly there was a lot of targeting until someone like Mandiant gives us a really good debrief. We don't know the details of exactly how that attack happened, but
Mm-hmm.
similar attacks have happened where they go through, when you have a whale of a client and you're hunting them. You're not just drive by Google ads. That's probably not how that would happen. Someone learned the
Mm-hmm.
infrastructure, learned how it worked, went through methodically and targeted them through these different means. Any way you can use some OSINT to start gathering up who works there, who knows what's
Mm-hmm.
their specialties. Okay, if that's their specialty list on LinkedIn, that's clearly the tools are probably using inside. Are there any
Exactly.
ways? Yeah, is there any ways in? Oh, look, this person's an expert on, says he's an expert at Asante VPN. So good. I know there's a couple 0 days floating around for those. Did he patch it
Yeah.
in time? That's my way in. What's you look at like DNS dumpster, what's those adjacent domains and that have some DNS links that we can start pulling those threads and finding
Mm-hmm.
them. There's a talk I've given a couple times. It's not really a target at the hacker audience because this is the stuff they already know, but we actually target the MSP audience because this is stuff they don't know or realize. This is why a lot of MSPs don't spend time at hacker conferences. I'm like, why not? They're not
Mm-hmm.
scary places. They're the places you really learn about how these things work. And
Mm-hmm.
so we gave a talk kind of how you would target an MSP, all the little things, what's public facing. The Screen Connect
Mm-hmm.
incident that happened earlier this year is an easy
Yeah.
example. You can publicly find all the Screen Connect, the slash and grab, as it was called, which was a great name for it. You could just add an extra slash at the end of anyone's Screen
Mm-hmm.
Connect instance that wasn't patched, and you could run through the setup. And we learned this is something we're a Screen Connect user, but we learned a lot of MSPs tied it, because it runs on top of Windows, also tied that Windows system to their domain. So even if they
Exactly.
stopped it from running, it became another movement. And once you realize you're in an MSP, you're in their domain, and they have access to many other systems, like all their different
Mm-hmm.
clients, you become this high value target. You're thrown up on one of those the sites that sell credentials, the
Yeah.
brokers,
Yeah. Yep. Brokers. Yep.
and it's a
On
feeding
on
frenzy
on
for
like
who's going to pop you.
exactly, and that's where we go, right? Even if we're doing a pen test or any kind of adversary work, we're going to go on the dark web. We're going to go on these wikis. We're going to see credential dumps. We're going to look at this, and you see, even if you could just go to Have I Been Pwned or just these, you know, clear web access sites. You know, you don't have to go to deep web or dark web to even access some of these credentials that have been dumped. But obviously, you get more information if you know dig a little deeper. But that's all good stuff, and I think OSINT is really interesting. You can find a lot of interesting stuff with OSINT, all the tools, and and you said something really interesting, which was about like LinkedIn, right? We go on LinkedIn, we look for a target, or say for example, you hired me for a pen test. You know, LinkedIn, we're going to go to your website, you're going to go through all that stuff. So would you, or in general, would you recommend putting on where you work? And there's a two parts to that. Would you do that? If so, why? And if not, like why as well? And what is the pros and cons for both of those?
Yeah. Oh, it's a tough one because I'm sitting at the intersection of being a big mouth on the internet talking about security, saying that I have an MSP, which we know we are well aware the volume of attacks that come at us because there's
Mm,
always some haters on that say, "Oh, look at this content creator. You know
absolutely.
what I want to do? I'm going to figure out how to make an example out of
Yeah,
it."
fuck them up. Yep.
Oh man, one of the things that people have learned from the time you hire in, I haven't seen him pop in yet. One of my staff, we figured out how they found him. He hired in. He was here 2 weeks before he started getting specific phishing emails to his cell phone. 2 weeks of employment. And I'm like, this is kind of expected. And they said, "Hey, this is Tom. This is my number." Like they were going back and forth with them. We actually have numerous staff targeted, and it's it's one of those things that I already know I've painted a target on my back. So a lot of self awareness. It's kind of like out there. I've already said it, so I can't unsay it, and I plan to keep continuing making media. So I just have to kind of
Yep.
go around like, sorry, I am wearing a company shirt that says CNWR. I'm not a hard person to figure out where I work. It's in all my videos. So
Hmm.
that's the downside of it. I mean, versus my friend, using LinkedIn's kind of not easy for him. He has a very generic LinkedIn that has none of his job references. He just keeps it brushed up, but it doesn't say where he works. It just has his general skills, like his SOC and STEM skills, that he's a Q radar expert and things like that. But he's very clearly does not list where he works. He does it in case there's headhunters that are making job offers. Because if you have a nice resume on LinkedIn, you can have there, but there's just nothing to tie him to what he actually. You can assume what he
Exactly.
does based on his LinkedIn, but you don't know where he does it. It's probably good to do that if
Yep.
you're worried about that targeting, or in his case, the company, like they would not be happy if he put where those details on his LinkedIn. That is a
Exactly.
of that.
Yeah, and I worked at a hedge fund many years ago that they didn't allow their employees to do that. It was about 10 years ago, and you know, till this day, it's not on my LinkedIn. So, so would you consider like, okay, I work at ABC Incorporated. I don't want the world to know I work at ABC. Would you still put ABC up there on not and put it as confidential? Because I see a lot of people put confidential, and they just put like, okay, I'm the a pen tester for confidential and put everything they're doing, but they don't identify where they work.
And
Do you
I think,
recommend that?
yeah, I would say that's pretty good, especially if it kind of depends. I mean, if you absolutely love where you work, why are you on LinkedIn at all? So the fact that you're on LinkedIn, if you're bothering to deal with the spam that is LinkedIn, you're there not as likely for social engagement because there's not a ton of that. There's always recruiters sending you silly
Yeah,
things. But it is good to keep some of the prospects open and connect with you. I think that's actually where I end up first connecting with you is actually on LinkedIn. I do it
yeah,
for that social aspect, but I already know I'm connecting specifically with other people in InfoSec because some of the other platforms have kind of fallen apart a little bit and maybe are less popular now. LinkedIn's been pretty good for me connecting with a lot of InfoSec people lately. At least I feel it has.
likewise.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I think in that circumstances, it is good to do it. I have a feeling LinkedIn is one of those places. Microsoft owns it. It's kind of just staying the course. They don't really have any interest in getting into controversial things. It's not what they do, other than they're cheap trying to upsell me on some AI plugin. I don't know. I just ignore it. They say, we'll
Yeah.
let AI write this for you for a subscription fee. I'm like, the hell you will. I mean, well, are you going to make my memes better? That's all I mean, that would, if they actually said we can improve your meme, I would actually possibly give them money. So there is at
Yeah.
least some path to getting some money out of me for LinkedIn. But I think in that case, if you start building some of the communities on there or participate in them, and kind of the recruiters can be really annoying. Be prepared if you the higher levels of you start getting your certifications, you
Mhm.
start getting, or you put on their Q radar. I mean, I know my friend has it on his is because he gets calls, and if it's the right call, he will wander off. I know he's gotten a call recently from a place, and he's like, they made me a really interesting offer. And because you never
Yeah.
know, and especially the corporate world got its ups and downs. It can pay really well. You can really like the
Hmm.
people you work with, and then there's a regime change, if you will. The
Hmm.
C-suite changes a couple people out, and then they start to hire their friends. And next thing you know, the company kind of sucks to work for, and you're like, well, good thing I have all these contacts on on LinkedIn.
Exactly.
The overall thing, though, one of the things that helps you if you're just from a cybersecurity career standpoint, or what helps my career is being out there and just connecting with a lot of people. It's not like
Hmm.
you're connecting with them just for the job. It's always good just to socialize. I learn a lot of things, but having a large circle of friends that are in the community really kind of helps your career path, because everyone knows someone who does a thing. And if you're at a place, you're like, man, I didn't even know this place needed that. I happen to know this guy who's got skills in exactly what you need. Let me give him a call, see what he's doing.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
that's one of the reasons I still spend so much time on. I always go back and forth, like, should I spend time on LinkedIn? But then I meet cool people like you, and I'm like, all right.
Appreciate that. Yeah, it's definitely a good platform to get yourself out there and connect with folks. And this is something that I wanted to put a little cherry on top of what we were just talking about, like from where we work, and then I want to go into like personal branding, right? Because like yourself, you started a YouTube channel, and then you use this personal brand to start something else, a consulting firm. So do you recommend, or what is your take on like starting your own personal brand? I can give my take first,
Yeah.
because I have the infosec brand. And it was definitely cool for me, because now I can, we were just talking about it, it goes into that, right? Because we were just talking about not knowing where I work. No one really knows where I work, right?
Right.
Everyone just knows infosec pat, right? So that's, I think, the beauty of, like, every time I'm talking, or just talking, interviewing or whatever, I just say, infosec pat's the company I work for, right?
Yeah.
And if you want to come after me, we can have beef,
Yeah.
but it so that's just that. Like, so what is your take on, like, your own personal brand, and just keeping your primary stuff, or maybe your prime, like yourself, obviously it's all the meat and potatoes for you, but like for
Well,
those that are just like, have their full-time job and then their personal brand, just to anonymize themselves.
yeah, I think what you did is really smart, and that is probably the better. If I could start it over, might be a better way I could have went. When I started my company, so I worked my first corporate job that I landed. So I worked at a couple small computer places. First corporate job is in 1998, and then I worked through the corporate world. And in 2003, I turned those corporate clients into my first actual clients. I started my company. Now my company
Hmm.
was just my last name. I just called it Lawrence Systems because I'm not clever. I couldn't come up with a name. I don't know. I was like, what are you going to call it? I'm like, because you go, I'm going to register a business. You get the thought in your head, but then when the paper, you're like, what are you going to call it? Lawrence Systems. I'm like, I was not really thinking hard on that one. So
Me neither.
I
Infosec
accidentally,
pat.
yeah, it was like, yeah, it was like, okay, I just stuck in my last name on it. And that was actually and it's still the entity that holds all the media and everything else. Back then, it was just an IT company. Since then, it's
Hmm.
split off, and CNWR took over the IT side. But I kept that
Hmm.
part public as well, because it became kind of a lead gen magnet for us for all the consulting.
Hmm.
I do the videos. And
Hmm.
I didn't really start putting it in as like a call to action, like, hey, you can hire us. I think it was like 2018 or 2019, which is wild because it only seems like it's a little while ago. But then I'm like, oh wait, that's 5 years ago, 6 years
5 years.
ago. So I've been doing this for a minute. But if you look at like what John Hammond does, and he's an easy
Yeah.
example. His channel is just his name. He's grown really
Yeah.
big. And everyone loves John Hammond. He's anyone who's talked to him at all. He's just a great. He's not just fun on YouTube. I've met him in person numerous times, and just great person. He doesn't talk much about where he works. He does when he's in the zone, so to speak.
Exactly.
Yeah. But it's not part of his channel. He doesn't say, hey, I'm John Hammond and I work at Huntress. If someone asks him, he'll answer. He's also done a pretty good job, though, just being John Hammond. But like you said, if you kind of keep it exclusive, actually, do you know Xavier Johnson? I don't know if you know him or not. Does
he work for Amazon?
No. Here's the fun thing. You don't know where he works because you can contact him. He's very much like he's done it more like you.
Yeah. He's a big kid, right? Like he's mixed. He's a big guy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Super cool. He's from here, the Detroit area. He lives in Cali now. He posts a lot on Twitter. He just posted something. I know he's speaking at some Fortune 500 event, which will give you an idea where Xavier plays. But it's all he's got. I can't remember the name of his company. It's Xavier Johnson. I think he has training. He doesn't just do training. He does pen testing and things like that for companies.
Yeah,
but he does have
him at DEF CON.
He's a regular at DEF CON. He's a regular at a lot of the events and things like that. He's done a good job of being Xavier, speaking at large events. He's got like a company name that he puts up front for all that. And you might guess at the scope of companies that he works at, but you don't know which one he works at. It's kind of interesting. I like the way he's done it as well. So there's kind of different paths that you can take on there by keeping himself kind of a free agent without kind of keeping that veil of, you know who he is, what he does. You may not know where he does it, but he also lets you know if you want to hire me to do those things. He's got a website. That's where you find him. On the back end, because I've known him for so long, I know the contracts he has and things like that. Because we were friends and we BS about it and stuff like that. But he's good at keeping all that out of the public eye of like what his day job is, if you will.
I think that's so critical. And I tell friends that, well, whomever, like, keep that out of the public eye.
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely important.
You can my friend Jay, he's talked about this a lot too. He runs Learn Linux TV, and prior to him going full-time as a creator, he was always really tight-lipped about where he worked. He did not post it, but this is years ago, so he had it on LinkedIn probably. And also, if you know who he is on LinkedIn, you realize you may not know what his first name actually is. And people took the time to dig into this. He got a phone call at work because someone said, hey, I watched a video you did on this. And he's like, on what? And at the time he worked for a pretty big company that specifically serviced, Atlassian. He was a designer he ran a team that did automations for updating Atlassian and things like that. And if you ever dealt with updating Atlassian, it's messy. So Jay built all these automation tools. So he's an automation engineer with a bunch of Linux stuff. So when someone's like a video and he's thinking in work context, like, what and who are you? And they start just going on about it. And he's like, and you can't direct call him. So they called the front desk and got passed over to him. And he's like, you can't just call me at work. And how did you figure out where I work? I don't talk about my work. I make a channel where I teach people Linux stuff. There's not a, by the way, I work for this company that builds automation tools. Like it's not something you announce. Techno Tim is another one. He does the same thing. He obviously, the tooling he uses because he talks about it all the time. He talks about Kubernetes. He talks about all these fun things, and you're like, he's really good at it. Well, yeah, it's because his day job is doing it, but you don't know what his day job is either. He's Techno Tim, the YouTube guy. He's Techno Tim on gaming and live streams he does, but that's where the veil starts. Like I said, I think it's a good choice of keeping some level of separation from that. It also removes any awkwardness if you change jobs or you get a buyout or things like that. You can kind of do it around without having to have that attached to your work, worried about work having a problem with it, because do they want people randomly calling? Not really.
Yep.
They don't really like that either.
Exactly. No, no, definitely not. And I think that's why I brought up that comment. So then we can transition now into like content creation. Now I wanted to obviously there might be people, and I was one of those people. Like when I first started content creation and creating videos, and I'm still shit at it. I want to be honest. I'm not the best with video, and look, I'm set up in a hotel right now, so I guess this is pretty good. But creating content and getting through that, was there a barrier there? Like, okay, like shit, do I have to show my face on camera? Do I just do a screen recording? Do I do both? Like, because I
Yeah.
get these
So
questions and I'm like, I'm pretty much the wrong person to ask because I'm just like, I just screen
I
record and just talk shit for 20 minutes. But
I
yeah, I just want to get
realized
your take on it because you've been in the game.
Yeah. So a couple things. One of the things I realized was, my son, he's 17, so he likes lots of different YouTubers. So uh, I realize now why so many of the different game YouTubers that are just regular creators hide who they are. And when I started meeting other creators, they call them the no face creators. And I was like, I never really thought about it. Then I realized, oh wow, this is actually kind of important. That a lot of them, they do not want to be recognized in private. Here's a real famous one that's kind of in, I want to say, adjacent to the hacking space, is the lockpicking lawyer. He's given a
Hmm.
talk at DEF CON, but interestingly, the talk at DEF CON, there is no photo of his face when he does the slides. He's got several slides because the talk's on YouTube, and he says, "Hey, when you before talk, no photos of me, no this, no this." He goes through an entire slide deck of all the ways people have, because he's got a PO box like you can send the locks to for him to take apart. And one of the interesting things he said, there's people put tracers in there. They've put like Apple AirTags. They've tried to figure out where he is. They hired a private investigator to watch to see who comes and picks up the packages. Like, you can get these weirdly, as you get to be the scale that, I forgot how many million subscribers he has. It's like, it's not become a game for some people to try to figure out who he is. And he's like, no. I like making videos. I like teaching people how to pick locks. I don't want to engage with the public. I want to be able to walk down the street. And
Yeah.
I don't think I have to worry about becoming so famous where I'm a celebrity. It is. I mean,
Yeah, me either.
I always joke with my wife. She now, oddly, my wife works for Blumere, the company we work for her. She recently got a job there, but she goes to tech conferences with me, and she already laughs because, I mean, not walking down the street, rarely does anyone know who I am, of course. But if we are a tech
Yeah.
conference of people who would be
Yeah.
consuming my content, you do get recognized. I think it's fun, but I can see how it would not be fun because
Yeah.
there's a point on there. So you kind of make that decision early on. Do I become a faceless creator? And do I just pick an avatar, and then no one really knows exactly who I am? I'm just here about the content. You keep it focused on the content. I didn't really
Mhm.
think that deeply about it. I just started hitting
Yeah.
record. So here I am, and it would be weird to hide my face now, and it would
Yeah.
be pointless because, like, look, there's already 1,000 videos that you put your face on. Um,
Yep.
the other side of it, and something me and you talked about just before it started too, is just the whole concept of, there's a lot you have to know to get all this working. There's a lot you have to know about cameras and gear. And it
Hmm.
becomes, I mean, I got to be a little bit of a camera nerd because I got into it a little bit. And I've now
Hmm.
helped a few other of my YouTube friends, Jay from Learning Lakes TV, when he needed a studio set up, he called me, and I came, and he just like, I'm
Yeah.
just going
Yeah.
to buy
Yeah.
what you have. I said, cool. I'll come on. I said, I know how to hook up the stuff that I have. So if you buy these same cameras I have, I know what the buttons do. And
Yeah. Yeah.
um, but because you don't touch them very often, when I did my studio tour, one of the things I pointed out is I took a label maker, and whatever I set the settings to, I stick it on the label maker. Like, here's the settings that this camera should be. That way, if I accidentally wander one of them, because it's not my field of, I know enough about them, but it's not my field of expertise knowing what every setting should be. Um,
Hmm.
it's funny because I get editors who reach out, hey, do you need help
Yeah.
color
All the
grading? And I'm
time.
like, yeah, but they don't understand what I need. I'm like, color grading? No, I don't care if I look whatever. If my lighting's a little off, it doesn't bother me much, and neither my audience doesn't care. They're here for the content. They're here for
Absolutely.
how they get the thing done. incidentally see my face, but it's not the focus of it. They're watching a screen share more than anything else. Like, here's the steps
Absolutely.
to get you to the thing. That's one of the most important thing as a content creator is the content, focusing on the content. We kind of joked is I still haven't, and I won't replace them, keep it as long as possible. I'm looking at this Blue Yeti mic. You can go acquire this mic
Mm-hmm.
used for $50 on eBay, probably. I don't think new it's
Yep.
more than like 120. I haven't looked in a while, but that's not that expensive of a tool. I happen to have a fancier camera, but you can go grab the um, little C920 webcam. You can find one of those somewhere for 25, $30 and start
Yep.
sharing your knowledge and stuff like that. You don't want to
Yep.
level up the camera gear too much because, man, I see so many people, especially my tech friends, because they have money, they go buy the fanciest gear. There's this curve of the fancier the gear, the more button it has, and the harder it is to learn. It's like
That is so true.
they have all these features, and you're like, I just wanted to be able to hit record. Oh no! You buy one of those real expensive cameras. You look at someone like some of those really big channels that shoot with those Red Dragon cameras. They don't even have audio on them. Like, you have to sync the audio separate just to get that to work. Like, and that's $100,000 camera. It's does it do a great picture? Yeah. Does it make your tutorials better? Probably not.
No, I don't think so. Like I think, yeah, because when I first started, you know, we spoke about this the first time, but if not, I was reaching out to folks to see what I need to get started, right? Like I didn't know anything about anything, and I just, I was doing the PC NSC, the Palo Alto certification with a few friends, and was doing some recordings of like doing, whatever the configs, and putting it on Google Drive and sharing it, and just like, oh, like Tom, you need to set up site-to-site VPN today, or in Panorama, whatever you want to do. And I was doing static routing or whatever, and then we're just sharing it. And then one of my buddies was like, "Oh, you should do this on YouTube." Like, I don't even know how to use YouTube. I had like a Dell. I wasn't even doing no face captures. I was just like had my little Logitech, headphones plugged in and just talking. And and then God rest his soul, like a friend of my Pat, he passed away, but like he sent me down like a Rode mic. Like I was like, oh man, this is so cool, blah blah blah. And like he, gave me this mic, and I'm like, this is pretty cool. It's way better than this, shitty thing that I'm just talking to here. And then like I used that for probably 3 years, probably 3 years. Like I had like my little Logitech camera, and even now, like at home, I'm probably going to end up using this one because this is DSLR. But like my camera at home is just a, Elgato Cam Link, and it's a 4K, and it works fine for me. And then I had the Logitech Brio. That thing was fucking awesome. Like I love that camera.
Yeah.
And so for those folks that want to make content, they don't have to go spend thousands and thousands of dollars. With like maybe $300 worth of gear, maybe even less, you can get something up and running.
There's I talk to so many people that want to get into the creative space, and I love helping them out and things like that. But one of the things that I point out, a lot of people go, "Oh, Casey Neistat, he's got 10 million, whatever number of subscribers." They see the way he makes content, but he's a filmmaker by trade, so he's got this style he brings to it. The filmmaker, he's a storyteller with film, and people try to emulate that. I'm like, that's not the right video. One of my best videos I recommend is called Casey Neistat's Guide to Filmmaking. And he tells you it's not about gear. If you don't have a story, don't buy the gear. He's got this really short, it's like a 9-minute video, and it's really short, but all he talks about is how he filmed his first HBO special on a stupid little cheap handy cam. He's like, not a
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood production set. And he goes, this was an HBO special. Like, this is where I made a lot of money, where me and my brother, we made this Neistat Brothers film, and this is the stuff we did it on. Then he goes through kind of, it's just all about the story. And if you kind of think about it from that perspective, that's always the best way to get into it, is start with the minimum amount of stuff. Even if it's not about the money. Even if you're well off, you're like, oh, cool, I got a job that pays really well, and I can go buy a $4,000 camera. Don't start with those same basic things of stick a webcam on there. Think about very focused about the content you're going to create. As someone pointed out, use the beer can microphone that I got here, the Blue Yeti. It's just USB. It plugs in. OBS Studio, I'm still using it, and it's
Me
still a
too.
great place. Yeah, it's just easy. Plug it in, go. Start sharing the knowledge you have that's out there. Most of that will get you so much further into the content creation. And then you slowly go, I think it's this I might need, or I think it's this other tool. But especially when it comes to the tech side of it, you'll find out you don't need that many tools. You kind
Hmm.
of look at the size of John Hammond and how many cameras do you think John has? He's not exactly rolling in a bunch of gear. You know what I mean? I think he's
Yeah.
probably an easy example of a guy who's got a really simple background, a really simple, good microphone, good quality. That does matter. Not that nothing that broke the bank, but you got at least good audio because he's explaining things to you, and the rest of it's just him screen sharing and talking about the stuff he's reverse engineering and covering, a process of how something
Yeah.
was hacked. That's what matters, is that content on there. That's what's huge on it.
No, absolutely. I think that's so true because I was one of them, right? Like I said, I started out with a Brio and then I upgraded, and then, I wanted to, I guess. And you made a good point. The more fancy, excuse me, the more fancy you get, the more difficult it gets. Like I wanted to get a little fancy, so I got a nicer um, microphone, and then I needed to get like an XLR interface, and the XLR had to connect to this, and then
Yep.
had to get a cable, and then I was like, holy shit, like this thing. And then like it was funny because I was actually speaking about John. I was on, I think the first week, and I was sick that day too. The first week of January, and like my audio went out, and then I had to go back to my my Blue Yeti, right? And the reason being is because I had my, I don't know if John, if you ever watched this, I think I told him too. Like my cable was kinked,
Ah,
so that's the reason why the audio was all failing. But it's like I got all this fancy stuff, and it's like, oh, doesn't really make it any different. Like in my opinion, like maybe the
yeah.
quality is a little a little
There,
better, but at the end of the
yeah.
day, it's not really doing
The
much.
biggest things that help is when I'm looking around me. I have
Yeah,
some foam on the walls here. There's a foam thing hanging over here. There's ceiling tiles that are specifically acoustic ceiling tiles. Those are actually really good investments. I have on the floor around me because this is actually a basement, but I didn't carpet it. I don't like carpeting in the basement, but I got some shag throw rugs. So I put a series of shag throw rugs in here because it kind of helps. You just kind of reduce the echo, and then you can use a cheap Blue Yeti after that to bring in the voice. It's not that hard to do. It's I wish, I don't know if he had a picture of it, it'd be kind of cool. Me and I remember when Jay was first doing it, he had like blankets hanging from this rigged up thing. That's how he recorded stuff in his early days. He had a spare room in his house, and he's like hanging. I think he had a blanket hanging and trying to reduce the noise. Because he's got kids, and there's noise on the other side of the wall, so you're just rigging things up. You can probably find all kinds of YouTubers who rig things up, but he focused on the content before he ever bought a
yeah,
lot more hardware. Because like you said, the moment you start, you buy, oh cool, it took me a while before I got the Sennheiser mic, but you're right, it's an XLR mic. There's not USB. Then you got to get
yeah.
this Audent is what I went with, USB thing. Then you got to connect that to OBS. Then you have to adjust it to match your voice and get the levels right. And
The
then you put a
gain and
sticker
all
on it.
this, yeah.
Yeah, then you put a
And I'm
sticker
not
on it not
doing.
to touch the knobs.
Yeah, I'm definitely not good at that, and it's taken a few configuration goes to get that thing going. And yeah, so the moral of the story, if you guys are just getting started, just you know keep it like the KISS method, right? Keep
Oh
it
yeah,
simple, stupid,
you'll
and
go a lot
it's
further that
definitely
way. You'll save a lot of money too. I'll throw Jason Slagle under the bus because he's got too much stuff. One of the things that when I was at our office, Jason, he's got a couple big green screens he bought. He's never used them, but he's got them.
yeah.
He's got
I have a
more
green screen
lights than
too, and
yeah.
sitting in my living room under my entertainment center, just sitting there. It's like, oh, because I was told to get this. Like, oh, when you're doing it, if you want to be invisible in the back, if you want to blah blah blah, you need this green screen. And I'm like, all right, I bought everything on this damn list, and like I used 30% of what I bought, and it's like,
Yeah, he
and
bought what is it? I can't remember what it's called. He bought the whole DaVinci Resolve deck that does all the
ninja,
mixing. He's never used it. It's like, and I
yeah,
stared at it. He says, you want to try it? I'm like, oh, it's harder than what I do now. It's like, oh, well, I was like, I'm not ready for more complexity in my life. And he's like, well, you can try it if you want. I say, it's a cool device. He bought it like 2 years
Yeah.
ago. It's just sitting there. It's plugged in. It will auto mix between 2 different cameras, but he barely uses. He bought one of the Black Magic cameras, and the problem with the
Hmm.
Black Magic camera he learned right away is, oh, it doesn't have like face detection and autofocus. Oh, you're supposed to load a LUT. What's a LUT? How do you load a LUT? How do you get this on here? How do you set these? There's a lot of me and him were looking at it because when I was there, this is all that's why it's so fresh in my head. I'm like, I don't know how this works. I mean, I could probably watch a YouTube video and figure out how to work this camera, but my camera is easy. Oh, and by the way,
Exactly.
Jason bought one of those 360 cams. He's got a $2,000 camera with $1,000 lens on it sitting there. And then he's got a little 360 cam sticking off the edge of his monitor. And that's what he uses for his videos.
Yeah.
Because one's easy and one's like there's a lot of buttons, and he's going to do it soon, but not.
That's exactly what happened. This is this was probably $600, $700 for this camera, this DSLR Lumex. And I'm like, that 100 or whatever, the Brio is whatever, 100,
Yeah.
$200, way easier. Just plug it in, do a little like this, like that, make it focus, and bing bong, I'm done,
The new one, we got these for our salespeople because we liked them so much. I think they're called. I may be getting the name wrong. They're like a 360 cam. If you look at webcams, what's neat about them is they move up and down and back and forth. So if you move your face, it actually follows you, and it's kind of cool because that way our salespeople, if they're getting a little animated while they're on the call, or if they want to stand up and walk around, it'll actually zoom in and it follows their face. It's like a couple $100. It's not that expensive, and it's fully automated, and you can turn on a little hand gesture thing. Like you can tell it to I forget what it does. You can tell it to do something like this with your hand. One of the sales guys figured it out, and it'll zoom in and stuff like that. You can do some hand gestures. And I'm like, that's cool. That it's so simple.
Yeah, that
like
sounds pretty dope.
they start the call, they can do their Zoom calls with it, and that's how most all the sales calls are done now. And but simplicity. That's one of the reasons Jason's like, well, this thing works well, and it's great. The color, like you said, you can't believe that the color's so good and everything else on it compared to that. I mean, granted.
Yeah.
I have a studio cam because I got a good deal on one that I'm using like right now for this, but I don't recommend it. Like I bought it because I was also dumb at one time and didn't know. I'm telling you mistakes I made too. You can throw me under the bus for owning a $2,000 studio cam that is kind of being used as a webcam right now, but my monitor. It's got a lot of buttons on it, so I mounted it, I set it, and I don't unset it because there's a lot of buttons on it.
Exactly. And that's how I want to get this one. I want to get this one a lot better. And just so this maybe sound like you just said, like hypocritical. It's like, okay, like you start out, I'm guessing when you start out, you can have those, the cheap way in, but obviously as time progresses, and I think having good quality equipment when at least you can afford it, even like you said in the beginning, like even if you're well off and you can purchase it, but if if your channel, your content is, like you said, you don't have a story, you don't have something behind it, there's no point. So you can do it with, I think Zach Hill from IT Career Quest, I actually saw him today. So he has he started out with his iPhone or his cell phone. And look, what is he at? Like 2.25 or 275? I don't even know how many subscribers he has now. But like he started out like this, and he progressively improved on his quality of content.
Well, and you look at, Mark Rober has like, I don't know, 10 million subscribers as well. He was doing a keynote at a conference that I was at. And I remember him talking about the iPhone and how much he liked it because he still uses it. He goes, he goes like this much percentage of the video, like 2 or 3 minutes of this 15-minute video he had were all done on his iPhone. He goes, it's in my pocket. Adam Savage, of Mythbusters fame, they just did a studio tour with him. He films most of his stuff on an iPhone for his videos he does on that channel. That channel is huge. You're like, this guy's a legend. He can build a camera probably. I mean, he's Adam Savage. He builds everything. But he's like, no, he goes, matter of fact, one of the things he pointed out is he loves doing it with the front facing camera, which he knows isn't as good, but it's okay because he goes, I can see myself in a front facing camera. I hit record, and that's how I record the videos. And the guy is Gerald Undone. He does studio tours and he's dumbfounded. He's just like, you're recording all this with an iPhone? And he's like, yeah, like you're a big like celebrity. You produce movies. And he's like, yeah, I'm like the behind the scenes guy. I was the Mythbusters guy, and now I'm the guy on this channel here. And yeah, I'm recording with an iPhone because I turned out to be the easiest. And like, are you mic'd up? He goes, no. Because he actually says it makes it more personal. I think he's got a really good point here. He says, if the audio is too perfect, is it really me? He says, when I move off access, my voice drops off like it would. So when I say, hold on, let me grab this, because he's going to go show you an object, and he walks a little bit further away from the camera, he's walking
And it
away from
drops.
you. But he
Yeah.
says, I'm walking
Yeah.
away from you, just like I would be there. Like, hold on, let me go grab this object over here. And his voice
Mhm.
went off access, it went lower. You seen him kind of get up and shuffle and grab stuff, because a lot of what he's doing is showing you his favorite tool or favorite project
Mhm.
he's working on at the moment.
Project. Yeah.
And I think it actually does. It really, watching that video was interesting to me, because it really brought me into this. That makes a lot of sense. Like, don't overdo it. Don't overproduce it. It's why people like us on YouTube, because it's as close as they can, is easily close as they can be to talking to us. And then it gives them more natural. When you meet someone, you're going to meet a handful of people at the hacker conference that you're at,
Mhm.
or the conferences I'm going to. And it's more
Yeah.
personal. If you meet a movie star who was in a big Hollywood movie, they were pretending to be someone with a large set and everything else. It wouldn't be the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's more interesting when you do it on a more personal level. Don't overproduce it. It keeps it raw, keeps it real. And I'm just here to share. The purpose isn't to wow you with my special effects. I'm going to
Mhm.
teach you how to do static routes on a Palo Alto.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's what goes into like the whole no cam, no face into like I
Mhm.
remember starting out my career and doing CBT nuggets more like when I got into
Yeah.
Cisco with Jeremy Chara, Keith Barker, and those folks. And in the beginning, well, for many many years, I didn't know who they were. Right? It's like them talking, and you never see who they are. And it's like when they started putting their face, it seems like a little more personable. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, that's the dude that's teaching me. So that's why, like, I enjoy putting, you put your little face in the corner. You can just, it's more that personable, uh, you
I
know,
I try
action, I
to
guess.
Yeah, I try to tell people. I mean, it's just when people say I guess because some people put on more of a show, and I really don't. And I think a lot of the people
I
that
don't
are
either.
in our community, and John Hammond's the same John Hammond when you meet him. Well, John Hammond's a little shy in person, so he's actually a little quieter at first until you get to know him. Like, there's a moment.
Hmm.
There's like that, and there is a little of that, because a lot of us have our own introverted behaviors, as tech people do. But for the most
Hmm.
part, yeah, people say, "Oh, you're just like you are in videos." I'm like, "Yeah, I'm just going over." And if I'm standing up explaining something or having a conversation, yeah, same way I'm having a conversation right now. I will admit, I know I am different on live streams, but that's because there's no, like, I'm just trying to be concise, and I
Hmm.
know I'm just talking to a camera. There's not a live audience. So I'm just going to walk you through the steps. Click this, set this setting here, this parameter here, this does this. So I'm a little bit more concise. With live streams like we are doing here, it's just free flowing. So this is probably
Exactly.
more the real me, but it's still relatively, if I were to teach a class and be drawing on the board this route, this IP address, like this, I
Hmm.
would have that more monotone voice that I get when I do that.
Yeah, yeah, that's definitely. I think the whole transitioning going from no cam to cam gives that personable feel. So that's definitely something, and just the impact that we have, like you said, John and all these other Heath or Keith Barker or Heath Adams or all these big creators that they touch so many lives, and we don't even know whose lives we're touching. We can have 2 subscribers, or we can have 6 million. We touch those two people, right? So
And
it's like,
it's always cool when you meet
go
those
ahead.
people in person. Like, hey, you helped me get further in my career. And I'm like, that's awesome. That's, a
Yeah.
lot of, that's the end goal. I like helping people out. We need more people in tech. How can I take some of the knowledge I have? Uh, Throwing people into the just go to college type thing is hard. And by the
Yeah.
time a lot of the stuff gets published, and you need your base knowledge in books. Network routing hasn't changed that much over the history of it,
Yeah.
but there's a lot more that's been stacked on top of it. So once you learn some of the fundamentals, to understand the cutting edge stuff, or like the stuff we talked about when I first got in here, hacking techniques, the threats that you face, you are going to be poised best not to learn from a college professor. Sorry, no offense to college professors, but from other professionals in the industry actively doing this. When I talk about an incident, I'm not talking about something that's in history books. I'm talking like something that happened last month that we have a whole debrief on. Here was the techniques. Here was the tactics they use. Here's knowledge you may want to have so you can better defend yourself against this type of attack. Those are really important skills that you need the information fresh. You need that now. You don't need it from. If you would have read a book from me 20 years ago, you'd say, oh yeah, what was that one free AV I used to recommend all the time? Like, I would never recommend it today, but Tom of forever ago definitely recommended AVG. I think everyone recommended AVG free, man. That was like in 2006 or 7. Like all of us, we would have said that.
I loved AVG. Yeah, I loved AVG.
And I know
we have a few. Yeah, go ahead.
It would be in that old book. But that's old information. That's not today's information.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be in the museum. We have a few more minutes. I know, like, it's hard for me to see the chat, to be quite frank. Are there any questions? I know there's about 50 people on. So thank you. Dakota, the Bearded IT Dad, I thank you so much for that. Cheers, man. Much love. Hopefully I can see you at one of these conferences. I know you're more on the networking side, but hopefully we can link up at. I want to have you on the channel as well, so I'll hit you up. In the 90s, there was.
Iris antivirus. I don't recall Iris.
I don't know Iris. I'm not sure. I haven't heard of that either. So that's that may be a new one. I haven't heard that one.
Iris was that was the image viewing tool called Iris.
Yeah.
Oh no, that was IrfanView. IrfanView was that one. Maybe there was a tool like that. Oh, it was DOS based, huh? Sophos was one of the old ones I used. There was Sophos, F-Secure. Those were some of the early ones.
ESET tool or ESET, AVG. I'm getting old, so I didn't take my fish oil today, so my memory's going out. So, any other questions? Obviously, I want to respect your time, and I don't want to, go past that. If there isn't, obviously, I guess my closing remarks. So, first, obviously, go subscribe to Tom's channel. Obviously, he has some awesome stuff. I thank you because I learned some stuff with PF Sense. I go to your shit all the time for PF Sense. So, actually, I took some of your ideas. So, thank you. And yeah, man, I appreciate everything you're doing for the community. I appreciate
you having me on. This was fun. This was always fun to connect people. I will probably end up. We'll cross paths soon enough. I'll be at one of these same hacking conferences. So
yeah, hopefully it'll be awesome and an honor to hit you up in person. Obviously, we can chit chat offline. And yeah, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, if there's so I guess obviously on your YouTube channel, if anyone wants to get in contact with you or connect with you on any other socials, how would they go about doing that?
I put everything that way because socials are dynamic, where I'm at and where I'm hanging out, and new ones always pop up. Everything centers around lawrencesystems.com, which is linked from my YouTube channel. From there, you can find out whatever you want to know about me. I even made lists of people like, what books do you like? I put that on there too. How did you get here? I have a whole thing called My Story where I walk people through, like, this is where I was, kind of a history. You don't have to do any OSINT. I've made it easy.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, that's actually a good video to make, like My Story, because my story is definitely unique. I go into it in bits and pieces of my life, but going from start to where I am today, I think people will get pretty surprised. But have to really jot the stuff down to see what I want to share, because maybe I'll scare some people. But
it's really interesting because you find out all kinds of stuff about people. Like, you worked where, you did what, and it's weird how some people come into this. And my wife, she just got a job working at a security company now, Blumera, and she's doing sales and things like that. So she didn't pivot too hard because she works sales, but she has a background in finance. Like, that's my wife's background. So it's kind of cool. People come from different places, land here and she immediately fell in love with the whole InfoSec community stuff. She's like, oh, this is like, the tech community is cool. I'm like, yeah, I think it's fun. And so it's neat seeing people who pivot from one side over to the other. And put that story together. I think people are always interested in that. I'm still working on a video for mine. I outlined it, which actually took some head scratching to make sure I got all the years and dates right. Because I made sure I tried to put it all in there. And actually, I have the video partly I've got an outline of a video. I didn't hit the record button
Mm-hmm.
yet. I'm going to
Yeah.
embed that at the bottom of the page. Like, and it starts at where I started in tech, my first computer. Someone says, what was your first computer? And some people, the funniest answers are sometimes when people go, oh, my first computer was, I didn't get it until like 2007 or 8. You're like, wait a minute, you're older than me. Like there's, you find some
Yeah.
hackers that they didn't even start. They just didn't have any access to technology. And the moment they got it, it was like this weird addiction. My friend who works
Mm-hmm.
for a Fortune, he's in the Fortune 500 companies he works for. He was a union steward here in Detroit. Like he
Hmm.
was just working at a factory. And I think that was 9 or 10 years ago. And now he's head of, he's responsible for 167,000 endpoints now, doing
I
all their
mean,
stock
yeah.
and sim.
Yeah.
He
That's a
just
big
one
transition.
day he said, "Screw this place," and wandered into tech.
Yeah. Exactly, and there's everyone has a story, and I definitely want to probably jot some stuff down and make a video. That's a good idea. Well, I need to write it down because if not, I'll forget. But obviously that comes to the top of the hour. I really want to
Yep.
thank you, Tom, for
Hey,
everything,
thank
and thank
you.
everyone
This
for
was
checking
fun.
me out tonight. And if you guys are going to HackSpaceCon tomorrow and Saturday, let me know. Link up, and I'll be there. I'll be doing a workshop on Saturday, I think at 3 p.m. So if you're interested in learning how to set up an offensive security hacking lab, come join. And yeah, I'll see you guys on the next one. And thank you so much, Tom.
All right, take care.